Hello everybody, how are we all doing? Welcome to Live Taps and Backstabs Rogue Edition. It's the Rogue. This is Sarlo. He's awesome, and yeah, he's doing really well. He's loving life. He's backstabbing little slug beetles for 222. We're going to ignore those glittery bluebells. That's fine. That's a pet hate of mine, but it's fine. At least it's not a big yellow question mark above the above them. So yeah. Anyway, so what we're going to do, we're going to talk about the patch notes. It's kind of a patch notes video today. It's more about one particular thing in the patch notes. And it's these techniques here, and it's why my technique bar has now just got one item on it, which you can swap this out for weak point as well. But yeah, I've got one item on here now. My abilities, there's some of these swap in and out. My utilities swap out a lot, apart from these last two here and probably Sinister Strikes. So these middle three here swap out an awful lot, depending on what I'm doing. My abilities stay reasonably consistent, but my technique bar, I used to swap out my technique bar an awful lot. There was lots of different variety of things that I could do in there. Now, that's the only technique which is probably going to be on my bar for the foreseeable future, unless things change, and we'll go into about why as well. And this applies to my Enchanter as well, my Enchanter, which I'm absolutely loving. The Dreadlord is hilariously different, yeah. So let's have a quick look at the patch notes. The patch notes that we've got today, or the patch notes that we got last week. I apologise for the lateness of this video. Quite frankly, I was a little bit grumpy. I was a bit grumpy about it, and I didn't want to be grumpy about the game, so I didn't want to put a grumpy video out. But just very quickly, just running through the patch notes. There's some really cool little general patch notes. There's some great little bug fixes. Due to supply shortages, most merchants on King's Reach no longer have antidotes, which is fine, whatever. But if we scroll down here, we get techniques. We get the technique section. So I'm going to read through all of this, and then I'm going to tell you how it impacts the game, why it's bad. Why it's bad, why the changes are bad, and not poorly thought out, but like the nuance of the changes hasn't been. I don't think it's been realised. And then also, actually, I was going to say what we can do about it, but I don't know whether we can actually do anything about it. If this is a direction that Visionary Realms want to go with the techniques. Okay, so right at the top, I don't think the techniques needed changing anyway. But, right, so techniques are going through quite a few changes, are in somewhat of a transitional state. This is an important thing. They're in a transitional state, so hopefully there is an end goal which is going to be beneficial and better than not even the current state, because I can sort of see where the end goal is dependent, taking into account all of the descriptive changes in here and everything that they say. Hopefully there's a different end goal, because the end goal that you can draw conclusions from all this, I don't think is particularly good. So the techniques now all provide expose. So you're now all providing, expose and opening gap used to be the opening for the techniques. One of them used to be applied by a melee, and then the caster would be able to manipulate that state, and one of them would be applied by a caster, and then the melee could manipulate that state, which was really cool. So now everything is exposed. So all classes all have expose. Opening gap and off balance have been removed, so there's no off balance now anymore either. With the state of this patch, there will probably be some stepping on toes regarding who provides and consumes the exposed state. Now, I'll go into that as well later. Please know this frustration point will be heavily reduced soon. So we're going to get another patch at some point which kind of cleans everything up. They've gone over, but their workflow is a little bit kind of hither everywhere, and they've missed quite a few little bits, which is creating this kind of stepping on toes thing. The final goal should reduce some of the fatigue and forced emphasis on stacking debuffs to feel effective. This is interesting. Should reduce some of the fatigue. We'll go into that later as well. Players can make the decision to create their own opportunities and capitalise on them with this expose state change. So you can now do it yourself. So you can put expose on, and then the debuffs which you used to be able to have to put on your opposite character or your opposite class genre players, you can now do it yourself. So rather than having to wait for a wizard to put on opening gap, we can now to then take advantage of, we can now put expose on and take advantage of it ourselves, because everybody has expose and everybody can just take advantage of that. So now everybody has debuffs. We've also given a new VFX, which is a massive big red thing. In fact, I can probably show you if we go back to the game at some point. Melee techniques remain at 1000 readiness. Most of their cooldowns have been removed. Also really important. So this is another one of those little nuances which has massively changed what happens. Caster techniques are going back to readiness system. I don't know why. And cost 2000 readiness. Most cooldowns have been removed or reduced. Percentage of base mana cost has been removed. I mean, I didn't like the percentage of base mana anyway, but having it as a mana cost it's essential. Resources, again, it's something that we'll get into later once we've read through all this, but resources, we don't need 18,000 resources to have to manage, and giving another one to casters it's not necessary. Hard CC provided by techniques now provides a 15-second stun knockdown immunity buff for the target. So if we do a hard CC, if we do a hard stun to silence a mob, now for 15 seconds after that we can't do anything to it. So we can't stun and then stun again because they become immune, which is just baffling. Techniques that previously provided the off-balance state are now moved over to a stun that requires expose to perform. So for instance, a monk can now stun because they used to be able to take advantage of off-balance to knock a mob down. Now they can stun, but it requires expose. So you have to put an expose up, and then they can stun and knock down the mob. However, then the mob becomes immune to knockdown and stun for 15 seconds. So then I can't interrupt that mob unless I have Hush, which is a specific interrupt on things like an Enchanter or a Wizard. Okay, so that's that. Upcoming changes not in this patch. So this is important. We've got to read through this and make sure that when we're drawing conclusions about this, we're taking into account this. We are removing debuffs to a tiered priority system, so combat balance will be shifted away from stacking multiple AC, resist, slow and debuffs. This means the NPCs proportionally will have less mitigation once that tiered system is in place. This also helps further our goal of unifying our NPC templates, which is great. Unifying our NPC templates sounds like that the chevron or group mobs might be kind of filtering out a little bit, and we just end up with one sort of class of mobs which just get harder and harder as you kind of get up the levels, kind of thing. Anyway, readiness generations will be unified to a static value that applies consistently both in and out of combat. This rate can be modified by buffs and equipment. So that's one of the important things to remember. So the readiness regeneration, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, which is currently in the game, is A, atrocious for some classes, B, ridiculous for some classes, but the end goal is that regen rates for readiness are going to be consistent across everything. So they're going to normalize readiness regeneration. Again, right. There are a lot of other elements related to these changes, but we're working hard to apply player feedback while returning to the vision of Pantheon. I'm glad this bit is in here, because I think the vision of Pantheon is starting to be lost, honestly. I think the vision of Pantheon, which was going to be a group-centric, social MMORPG, casting its ties back to games like EverQuest and Vanguard that some of us, I'm not going to say all, that some of us played in the past. I think that is slowly being lost, and I think Pantheon needs to be educating and showing the masses, if you like, showing the masses how cool of a game this can be if we stick to that vision and we don't do things like where are they? Where are the sparkly the sparkly vegetables. We don't do, because we don't need sparkly vegetables. Um, needs to be sparkly vegetables are just they're just a pet peeve of mine. They don't need to be sparkly vegetables. If you want to have something about the vegetables that makes them visible, have seeds flying off them or pollen flying off them. Don't make them sparkly. Anyway, right? Yes, we're talking about techniques. So techniques. So what have all these changes meant? So quite simply, let's get this off and we can have a look at this. So if I bring up my spell book here, I've got techniques in here. So an attack that blinds your opponent to their hatred, reducing threat. So I now have a technique which I can put on my bar, which costs 1,000 readiness and reduces the threat of the mob against me, which in theory is quite good. I never have a problem. The tank that I use, you've seen in all the videos at the beginning of patch notes videos and stuff, Diab and DM and all the awesome tanks that I group with. They don't have problems holding aggro. I'm pretty good at kind of controlling my aggro. If I do get quite spiky, then I can kind of pull off a little bit. So I don't really put that one on. So that's 1,000 readiness saved. Hidden swing I've got on here. This deals bonus damage when we're behind the target. So if we just go up to this mob here, I've got 3,000 readiness here. So for 1,000 readiness, I can do 132 damage, but it's back already. It's got no cooldown. So as long as I've got readiness in here, I can just hit it again and do another 132 damage. And then I can hit it again and do another 132 damage. So in theory, if you are very careful and you weave that, you allow your auto attacks to hit to gain readiness. If you allow your auto attacks to hit, in the current state I should say, then you can weave all of that in. You can weave that in with backstab, so you can do backstab for 200, 300. You can weave in your auto attacks. You can then hidden swing for 132, whatever, and then you can do it again. So it turns into a 100-point dot, effectively. So why Strike of Demise? Actually, we won't use Strike of Demise. We will use, let's use Deceptive Strike. Deceptive Strike is a good one. So, Deceptive Strike. Why would I use this over this? So this is 100 points, 100 point damage for 1,000 readiness, and I get my readiness back. At the moment, I get the readiness back quite quickly because I'm a melee class, so I'm hitting in melee a lot, so therefore I'm getting my readiness back quite quickly. This requires me to put on expos, or requires somebody else to put on expos, so that's 1,000 readiness already. I'm then casting another 1,000 readiness to put a dot on, which is a light bleed. So I'm now making the mob bleed if I have a piercing weapon, which I do. I've got a dagger. So I'm now making the mob bleed. I can show you this. Let me very, very quickly put on expose as well, just for the sake of this. Hopefully I won't kill it. In fact, what we can do is we can put on a really, really low level weapon. Hopefully we don't kill it. So we can go up to this mob here. We can put expose on it. And then we can dot it. And the dot is hitting for 12. Okay? And that's on a Greycon mob. It usually hits for about 6 to 8. So I can dot it for 6 to 8. So it hits for 6 to 8 a tick. Or I can hit 1,000 damage for 1,000 readiness. It's bafflingly silly now, because we can now, each class can now open and close their own states. Now it gets even more silly when we start thinking about things like where are the debuffs? Trick shot. So if we put trick shot on here, trick shot is the one that if I'm using a piercing weapon, I can apply pierced armor. So pierced armor lowers the armor class of the mob by 20%. If I can do that, it's going to cost me 2,000 readiness, or it's going to cost somebody 1,000 readiness to put expose on, and then it's going to cost me 1,000 readiness to put that on. Or I can do it, so it's going to cost me 2,000 readiness, but I've got to click the button twice, I've got to wait for the global cooldown. Like, at this point, these should just be what they are. Like, they don't need exposed. These literally debuffs now, technique debuffs do not need the exposed state. Like, they shouldn't need it, because it's obtuse for obtuse's sake. Like, they're forcing me to put a state on so that I can click a debuff. So that why not just make the debuffs 2000 readiness? Why not just make that entire ability there 2000 readiness? Because if I can put the if I can put the expose on, and then I can click it instantly because there's no global cooldown on any of these, then what's the point on the states? What's the point with off balance now? Like, off balance, it's not in the game anymore. There were synergies. There were really, really nice little synergies. I would be able to put things in an off balance state. I would be able to disorientate them with flash trap that would then allow an enchanter to come up and do more damage with his nuke. Like, there were synergies in there. Now there are no synergies. There aren't any synergies. There aren't anything. There's nothing that we can do in terms of using an ability to open up an opportunity for somebody else to do something. It's now just everybody has exposed, so everybody can do everything. So we've lost the synergy. We've lost the synergy of kind of weaving things together and working with your group friends. I don't know why techniques were such a big problem. They say in the patch notes that they're working towards a tiered debuff, or a tiered technique debuff system, which to me suggests that if you add tier 1 to the mob, I mean, this is just, I'm just kind of spitballing what this might mean. If you add tier 1 to the mob, then you're going to lower everything by 10%. If you add 2 stacks of a debuff to a mob, it's going to lower everything by 20%. Okay, so we're not going to have pierced armor. So here we're not going to have pierced armor and defenseless and overwhelming mind, and we're not going to be able to pick exactly which mob or which debuff we want to apply to particular mobs and things. It's just going to be tiered, and the more tiers you can put, the more tiered debuffs you can put on a mob, bearing in mind that I can do it in a second with global cooldown. I can click expose and then click whatever the tier is going to be. So that it's removing the player skill ceiling. It's really difficult to explain how this is going to impact without kind of seeing all the nuances and everything. But ultimately, like, this is one of the nuances of the new system, is that the monk in my group now applies the armor debuff, and I just go 100 damage, 100 damage, 100 damage, 132 damage with the backstab, 100 damage, 100 damage, 100 damage, 132 with the backstab. I've obviously thrown corrosive brew on there as well. Like, that's just that's just the way it works now. If they are going to, in fact, let me just very, very quickly swap to a caster, and we'll have a look at something else. But if they're going to, okay, so we're just very, very quickly, I'm just swapping over to my Enchanter. Now, I can't move on my Enchanter, so we'll just be using it for demonstration purposes. I'm currently right up on the Werewolf Mountain. We're gonna camp here again tonight. So here is my beautiful Enchanter, and you'll notice that she also only has one technique on here. This one is bugged. This is currently still 4% of base mana. So I can now do exposers. I'm one of the I think there's two classes in the game that can still do expose with mana, which is good. But this is the only technique that I have on here. I don't want any of the other ones on here. This is really important for an Enchanter in terms of lowering the threat. I mean, it's not in the grand scheme of the game. It's not, because at some point my tank is going to very, very quickly get aggro on a mob that I have mezzed. So I'm just going to take a couple of hits. It just kind of puts like heal stress on the healer that I've taken a few hits. So I have this on. This, you'll notice, costs 2,000 readiness. So that's 2 of these bars. You get 3,000 readiness on this. So it cost me 2 of these bars to use this ability, which is a key ability in the Enchanter's repertoire kind of thing. But it's the issue I have here now is a caster. I now have mana resources. So if this was a wizard, I'd have mana resources, I'd have readiness resources, and then I'd have all the focuses to kind of deal with and sort out. If I'm a cleric, I've got a mana resource, I've now got a readiness resource, and I've got all the arcane power resources to kind of balance and use and keep up with. The readiness for a caster is just an unnecessary resource. It's just unnecessary. If you're going to normalize all the readiness regeneration across all the classes and make it all the same, but then you're going to also make the casters pay more for to use their techniques because I don't know why, because we're more powerful or something, because casters rule, then it's going to have implications on how the game is played out using these abilities. And again, if I have to put on expose, and then where are we? Force is not one. There we go. So thwart power. I want to use this to create grappled, reducing the outgoing damage by 10%. So I want to stop the mob hitting 10% less. I've got to click expose, and then I've got to click that. I can do that. I can do that within a second because of global cooldown, and these don't have a global cooldown. So just make this use. Just make this use the resource. It doesn't need the expose. You don't need that first step. It's completely pointless now. The expose is utterly pointless. The only time when the expose is slightly, okay, I can see that working in terms of synergizing with your group, is when something like a monk can use expose to stun a mob. So you have to make sure that an expose is on a caster mob so that the monk can then stun and interrupt it. But we've got other classes that can stun and interrupt using their abilities. Like I've got like three stun interrupts down here at the moment. We've got a couple of other ones, like the Dreadlord can stun interrupt in there. I know you're giving other classes abilities for it, but having to put debuffs on, having to put an expose on a mob so that you can then stun it is the only use of expose now. It's the only sensible use of expose, because anything else is just it's just awkward for the sake of being awkward. Like I am now clicking buttons twice because I can do it myself. So why not just take like, techniques barely even need to be here. They may as well just be abilities again. And if they're going to give an Enchanter the ability to reduce outgoing damage by 10%, then just make thwart power an ability. Give us 10 abilities, give us a bar of 10 abilities, get rid of the technique bar and put the abilities and put the techniques back on abilities, and then make casters use mana for all their abilities, and make melee use readiness or whatever their other resource is for all their abilities. We now don't need techniques. If this is the direction they're going, we now don't need techniques. They don't need to be there. The worst thing about the techniques is things like this, class specific techniques, which now I can't use because I have to go and melee the mob to get my readiness back. Like we were playing last night over in Wild's End, and I was talking to my Enchanter. I was talking to my Enchanter friend, who is the Enchanter friend. It's the reason why I have Khalida, because the Enchanter just looks so much fun in his hands. And he was he was saying, well, I'm going to have to go and melee the mob now because I need to have confusing blow up. So they're now forcing me to go and stand by the mob and melee it as an Enchanter. And as an Enchanter, and I know this is a very kind of niche viewpoint, as an Enchanter you need to be looking back on the battlefield so that you can see what's happening around the battlefield, so that you can pick on mobs that you need to control, CC, stun, anything like that. So being up in the mob's face and hitting it and stabbing it just so that you can get readiness is ludicrous. And yes, I know the end goal of this is that everybody's going to be getting readiness back at the same pace. But casters shouldn't be using readiness. I cannot see an argument to have casters using readiness at all. Absolutely, categorically not. The thing about using a percentage of the base mana I didn't like either, really. Like, if you want to apply expose, just have it use 5 mana. Like, using a percentage of base mana limits the amount of incentive that we have to go and get more mana, because if everything is just a percentage of the base mana, it doesn't matter whether you've got 700 mana or 70 mana. It's just going to use 4% of it. Yeah, that's beside the point. So the Enchanter has been absolutely crucified with this, and if they're going to keep all of these at 2,000 readiness to do stuff, we're not going to be able to do anything anyway. Like, to be able to debuff as an Enchanter now, to put, because so this is what my bar used to look like. Let's do that. So I used to have expose on there, I used to have force on there, and I used to have, is it brain drain? Yeah, brain drain. And then, so this is what that's what it used to look like, and it was probably that way around, like that. This is what it looked like. Is that the right way? Is it exposed? Yeah. So that's what my technique bar used to look like before the patch. So I would expose, I would lower the magical defense, which means that my spells would hit more often, and I would throw an opening gap on if my group needed me to, and then I would have this up there because this cost 4% of base mana, and it was on like an 8-second cooldown. So if I mezzed a mob, I could just drop a little bit of threat drop against that mob. And then I could kind of go around and kind of keep an eye on the battlefield, keep an eye on debuffing and things like that, and mezzing, and this was my setup. So now, go, because I just haven't got the readiness for all of that. I need to use my readiness on this, because this is critical to playing an Enchanter, and if it goes badly and a mob hits me and then ravages me, then I'm dead, and the group probably wipes, because I'm no longer there for crowd control. So this is the only thing I want to spend readiness on. I don't even want to risk accidentally pressing another button on here, wasting my readiness on something when I need to use this. So this is the thing that's critical for me. If they want to take these techniques into a direction where everybody can debuff everything, then the point of this becomes irrelevant. I don't understand why this is now so important, because you're just making us press a button twice. It's just being awkward for the sake of being awkward. You're just and what was there was a phrase that they used in here. Where is it? Is it at the beginning or at the end? So reduce some of the fatigue and forced emphasis on stacking debuffs to feel effective. So reducing some of the fatigue. So because we can now apply it all ourselves, they're adding fatigue, because we can now go expose and debuff. So they're actually adding button presses because we can do it anyway. It's baffling. So I'm just going to swap back again. I'm going to go to one more class, and we're going to show you something else as well. So I'm just going to camp out here, and we'll show you something in a second. In fact, just before I go, and I'll try and so I don't fall off. The readiness regen at the moment is so poor for a caster. If I use this ability and I use 2,000 readiness, it takes me about 3 fights to get back to a point where I can use it again, unless I'm meleeing. So I have to, and I know this is going to change because we're going to get a readiness, consistent readiness normalized regeneration in here as well. But if I have to wait for my readiness to build up 2,000 points worth so that I can use one of my class defining, well, not really class defining, but I don't really want to say class critical, but like a skill an ability that I use so often and so readily, and I need to have it on hand whenever I need to use it. It's again, it's just obtuse for the sake of being obtuse. I really don't like it. Right. Okay, I'm going to camp and I'm going to swap over and I'm going to show you the Dire because the Dire is hilarious. It's the same as the Warrior. So if you are a melee, class at the moment, and again, I know it's going to change, you get so much readiness coming out back at you, but the cooldowns, the fact that these don't have a cooldown anymore is hugely funny for things like Dire Lords. So be right back. Okay, so my little Dire Lord, my amazing, awesome, fantastic little Dire Lord, he's a little halfling, he's a little honey, he's amazing and I love him dearly. Yeah, the fact that I can't be an elf Dire Lord was very frustrating, but I've kind of fallen in love with this little halfling dude. Yeah, right. So this is my Dire Lord technique bar, and you'll notice that it's chock full. So as a Dire Lord, I now have the ability, because I can get readiness back. I mean, my readiness is currently empty because I used it all in the last fight. But because I can get my readiness back so quickly, I am in melee and I am hitting things, so I am swinging with my weapons. I am getting hit, so I'm getting readiness back at an improved rate from that as well. And even if I wasn't getting readiness back at a ridiculous rate, bearing in mind that I probably get about 10,000 readiness back in any given fight, roughly on average, somewhere around there. And a Enchanter, ignoring the fact that if I sit down I don't get any readiness back at all, so I can't even charge up my resting ability at the end of a fight because I need my readiness as an Enchanter, so I have to stay standing in a fight and then sit down at the end, so I can't even get a jump start on my resting mana regen. An Enchanter gets about 400-500 readiness per fight, so if I use a 2,000 point ability, then it's going to take me about 3 fights to get my readiness back so that I can use that ability again, unless I walk into combat and stab it with a dagger or a stave. Top tip: if you do want to get readiness back quicker, use a two-handed weapon. You get more readiness. At the moment, you get more readiness using a two-handed weapon than you do using a single-handed weapon. So top tip for you casters: get your staves out. If you're a cleric, get a hammer out, big double-handed hammer. Now, how does this change? How does this change affect Dire Lords? We have an ability called Arcane Tear, which adds steals 6% of the resistance of the mob. It lowers their resistance and it gives you resistance. So it's like a debuff. So I can now, because there's no cooldown on these abilities, I can start a fight and go click, 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 and add all 3 stacks of Arcane Tear to the mob straight away. Arcane Tear also stacks with Provoking Phantoms, so within 3 seconds of the fight, well, technically 4 seconds of the fight, because I'm going to put Blood Boil on as well. So within 4 seconds of the fight, I can go Provoking Phantoms, two stacks of Provoking Phantoms and a dot, and then 1, 2, 3, 5 stacks of Provoking Phantoms and a resistance debuff on the mob, and I'm sitting there getting smashed to bits, regenerating all my readiness at the same time as well. So as a melee and particularly as a tank class, this is a great change. It's amazing as a warrior. I've got a friend Calton or Caltony who's his warrior. His warrior is getting so much readiness during a fight because warriors regenerate readiness even faster. Where in a fight they have innate readiness regeneration as well. And again, I'm going to keep saying this. I'm going to keep prefacing this because I know you're all going to go down to the comments and say, but it's going to change. Yes, we're going to get. They're going to change it so that we get global and normalized readiness regen for all of us. But at the moment, you just get so much. It's absurd. But the cooldown, the fact that there's no global cooldown for these now, that I can just go Arcane Tear, Arcane Tear, Arcane Tear. I can stack it up for 3,000 readiness, and then I can get it back, and then I can just go again. I can always use Rune Carver because I've got 1,000 readiness so quickly. So yeah, I at the moment, I'm wondering whether this bar is even necessary. Like if I was going forward, and if I wanted to kind of add my little 2 pence into the wishing well of what I would like them to do with this, is I would use, because melee I don't mind, like melee don't need this mana here, so for goodness sake take that off the UI, but that's a UI thing, that'll come at some point. So melee, use readiness. Readiness as a melee resource is fantastic. So as a melee we then have readiness, we have health, and we have whatever our class specific resource is. Casters can have their health, they can have their mana, and then they can have whatever their class specific resource is. Okay, so everybody has 3 sets of resources that they can control, have to keep an eye on, manipulate, balance, and use around a fight. Techniques, I would see, this is going into another video, I'm going to bring it up now. I would say that the techniques go back on the ability bar. I would say give us 10 abilities, so open up these and give us 10 ability slots. I would even argue sometimes that some of these could be dropped in as abilities as well and just give us 10 ability slots full stop. But for the moment, let's just leave the utilities as they are, because that's another conversation. But I would suggest that all of these techniques, because that isn't anything related to expose. This isn't anything related to expose. That isn't anything related to expose. Rune Carver, for instance, is exactly the same principle as the Cleric Writ of Refreshing, where you get mana back, and you put yourself in a vulnerable state for 20 seconds and you get mana back. The downside of that is it now costs 2,000 readiness. So I need to have readiness, and as a caster or as a healer, I now have to be in combat to gain readiness. I know it's going to change, but I have to then check my readiness resource to then be able to get my mana back, which is just absurd. It's just silly. So there's an awful lot of techniques in here, ultimately, that shouldn't be techniques. They're, like Haunted Slash doesn't need to be a technique. Make it an ability. Give us some. I mean, the Dreadlord is incredibly competitive in the ability bar anyway, but just put all of these back on. Just put all of these back on the ability bar, because none of them are techniques. The only reason this technique bar came up were for exposure and doing these expose, opening gap, synergizing and weaving of using all the different groups and all the different classes in the group, using them all together to create opportunities to debuff the mob. If you're not going to do that now, then none of these are techniques. None of these should be techniques. I can't find any more. So Rune Carver's in here, Haunted Slash is in here. We've got another technique, so the Arcane Tear. So it's all the ones that I've got up here. Just stick them back on the ability bar. They don't need to be up here. If they want to use readiness, then make them use readiness. Put them down here. They're our two resources. Put the caster ones. The caster ones, for instance, the one for the Enchanter, the confusing blow, is so good. It has no reason to be a technique. It has no. Just make it an ability. Make it an ability that uses mana like it used to do for the technique anyway. It used to cost 4% or 8% of base mana. Stick it on the ability bar and use it as that. All the vast majority of class techniques should not be considered techniques now, and using this unnecessary extra resource that they're adding in. Well, they're not adding in. It's always been in the game, but they're just making us use an extra resource and making us balance an extra resource. I'm particularly talking about casters here, so it's just not necessary. I don't mind. I really like the fact that we have, as a melee, we have 3 resources to balance. We have our health, we have our readiness, and we have our class-specific resource. I really like that. It's really fantastic. But as a caster, why a caster should now have to balance 3 resources? I just don't know. Like, why make a caster have to balance more resources just because of these techniques. Anyway, hopefully I've hit every kind of point that I wanted to make in this video. I know it's probably been a long one, and I know it's probably sounded a little bit negative, but I'm still absolutely loving this game. The game is fantastic. I was just so grumpy over the weekend because what this change seems to have suggested is that they are still fiddling, that they are still happy to fiddle with systems which are in place in the game which are working fine, rather than I mean, I'm sure they are working really hard on getting more content out, but rather than kind of putting more effort or more time into content and dropping content a little bit more readily, and getting all of that out, getting more content out, and getting more classes and more abilities. Like my Dreadlord still doesn't have anything past level 28. I don't think I have an ability past level 28. So rather than going around and doing the little class revamps and things, they're still fiddling about things. Like, in my opinion, the techniques were working fine as they were. Yeah, I would like them to kind of just remove them and just put them back on the bar. But if they're going to make the ability of every single class be able to do some sort of debuff, then just give them a debuff. Just give them a debuff. Just give us an ability that debuffs. If you want to allow rogues to double AC debuff, just make our corrosive brew stack, so that we can throw one on and then we can throw another one on. Just allow stacking of some abilities like that. It's just, I just find it pointless to have to require 1,000 readiness to do something just so that I can click another button for 1,000 readiness to do something again. So. Yeah, there we go. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to do a rogue feedback video later in the week. I'm going to go through all the rogue stuff. I'm going to go through all the Dreadlord stuff. And I'm going to do a quick Dreadlord feedback video, which is phenomenal, by the way. The Dreadlord is amazing. There's really, really good competition for what goes on here. These are essential, by the way. If you're a Dreadlord, make sure you have these on. They are fantastic for snap aggro. Although now you can just 1, 2, 3 triple arcane tear within the first 3 seconds of the fight anyway, so it's pretty cool as well. Right, so that is everything, guys. Please drop your comments down below. Hopefully, if you are a Visionary Realms developer and you're watching this, this is all meant with absolute love for the game. I'm loving the game. I just want it to be successful, and in my opinion, you're fiddling away from the vision that Pantheon originally had. Like you're just adding simplicity into areas. Right. So thank you very much, everybody. Take care of yourselves. Have an amazing week. And if you're on Black Moon, drop by and say hello to Malleus. Say hey to Sarlor if I'm ever on, and I'll be on Kalida, I think, tonight as well. We're going up to the mountain again. So yeah, thanks very much, everybody. Take care. Have a fantastic evening, and I will see you in Terminus. From the little halfling Dreadlord, he says, "Hiya!" I don't know. Just thank you very much, guys. Take care, and I'll see you later. Bye bye.